$300. That was all it took to buy a woman and 7 children on a freezing January morning in Montana Territory. 43 men had walked past her, laughed at her, called her worthless. Then a stranger stepped forward, a man with storm gray eyes and a face carved from granite. $300 in gold, he said, for the woman and all 7 children. Nobody knew why he did it, not even him. But what happened next would change everything. This is their story. The gavel came down hard. Sold. Lot 22, 1 mare, $40. Martha Holloway flinched at the sound. Wood against wood, sharp as a gunshot. In 3 minutes, that same gavel would fall for her. She pulled her children closer. 7 bodies pressed against hers like they could burrow inside her skin and hide there. The January wind tore through Copper Falls Town Square, biting through her worn wool coat, through her patched dress straight down to bone. Mama. Rose tugged at her sleeve. I am cold. I know, baby. Mama. Violet started crying. I want to go home. Home! Martha almost laughed. They had no home. Not anymore. Hush now. She knelt in the frozen mud, pulling both 4-year-olds against her chest. We are going to be fine. You hear me? We are going to be just fine. She did not believe it, but she had learned long ago that hope was a gift mothers gave their children even when they had none left for themselves. The auction platform stood 6 feet above the crowd, wooden planks rough and splintered. Martha had splinters in her palms from gripping the railing during the long hours of waiting. She did not feel them anymore. She did not feel much of anything except the cold and the fear and the desperate prayer that someone, anyone, would see value in a woman the whole world had already discarded. 43 men had walked past her today. 43. She had counted every single one. Some had laughed openly, making comments about her figure that made her children flinch. Some had sneered with undisguised contempt. Most had simply looked away as if she were something shameful, something they did not want their eyes to touch. Too fat one had said loud enough for everyone within 50 feet to hear. His companions had roared with laughter, slapping their thighs like he had told the funniest joke in Montana Territory. 7 kids another had whistled low, shaking his head in mock sympathy. Might as well buy yourself a plague. Who would want that burden hanging around their neck? She would eat you out of house and home inside a month. Only a fool would take on that mess. Not worth $10, let alone the asking price. Martha had not cried. She had stopped crying 3 years ago on the night Henry died in her arms, coughing blood onto the pillow, while their children slept in the next room, blissfully unaware that their world was ending. She had learned that night that tears were a luxury. Tears did not feed children. Tears did not pay debts. Tears did not keep the wolves from the door. So she had locked her tears away in a box somewhere deep inside her chest, and she had not opened that box since. Lot 23. The auctioneer's voice rang out across the square, cutting through the bitter wind. Harold Finch was his name. Thin as a rail, spectacles perched on his nose like a nervous bird, fingers permanently stained with ink from years of recording human misery in neat columns and rows. He had been doing this work for 20 years, and in all that time, he had never once looked directly at the people he sold. He did not look at Martha now. Martha Josephine Holloway, he announced, consulting his ledger. Widow, 34 years of age, 7 children ranging from 4 to 14 years. He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Opening bid is set at $75. This includes all passage fees and provisional custody of minor children. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Not pity, something uglier. Amusement, derision, the particular cruelty of people who have decided that someone else's suffering is entertainment. Opening bid. Finch repeated, his voice cracking slightly. $75. Do I have $75? Silence. The wind howled through the square, carrying snowflakes that stung like tiny needles against exposed skin. The crowd shifted, men stomping their feet and blowing on their hands, but no one stepped forward. No one raised a hand. Martha lifted her chin. She would not bow. She would not break. Even if no one wanted her, even if they scattered her children across the frontier like dead leaves in autumn, she would not give these people the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Beside her, Sarah gripped her hands so hard that Martha felt the bones grinding together. 14 years old, but already wearing the face of a woman who had seen too much. Sarah had become her right hand over these past 3 years, helping to raise the younger ones, stretching every penny until it screamed, holding the family together with nothing but love and stubbornness. Mama Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. Nobody is bidding, I know. What do we do? Martha squeezed her daughter's fingers. We wait. Wait for what? She had no answer. Thomas stepped forward, then his 12-year-old body rigid with barely contained fury. He was small for his age, underfed like the rest of them, but there was fire in his eyes that reminded Martha so much of Henry. It made her heart ache. I could work, he said, through clenched teeth. I could find a job in the mines. We do not need some stranger to buy us like cattle. I could take care of us myself, Thomas. Martha's voice cut sharper than she intended. Not now, but Mama, I said not now. He fell silent, but his fists stayed clenched at his sides and his jaw trembled with rage. He was too young to understand that the world did not care about his courage or his determination. The world only cared about what you could give it, and a 12-year-old boy with nothing but calloused hands and a fierce heart was not worth much in the ledgers of territorial law. Lucy pressed against her brother, her wild red hair escaping from beneath her bonnet, her 10-year-old eyes blazing with the same defiance that had gotten her in trouble more times than Martha could count. If anyone tries to take us, Lucy whispered fiercely, I will bite them. Hard. I will bite them until they bleed. Despite everything, despite the cold and the fear and the 43 men who had deemed her worthless, Martha felt her mouth twitch. That is my girl. $60, Finch called out, dropping the price with poorly concealed desperation. Surely someone needs a capable housekeeper, a woman willing to work. These children can contribute to any household. Good stock, healthy, still nothing. The crowd shifted again and Martha caught sight of Horace Webb pushing his way toward the front. The territorial officer was a gray-haired man with a face like curdled milk and eyes that had crawled over her body when they met yesterday, lingering in places that made her skin want to peel itself off and crawl away. She had heard what he said afterward when he thought she was out of earshot. That fat cow will not fetch $10. We will be splitting those brats up by sundown. The boys can go to the mining camps. The girls, well, there are always people looking for young girls. The way he had smiled when he said it still haunted her dreams. Now Webb caught her eye from the edge of the crowd and smiled again. That same thin, cruel smile that made her stomach turn to ice. He held up a sheaf of papers, and even from 20 feet away, Martha could read the words printed at the top. Orphan Placement Act, Work Farm Assignment, Foundling Home Transfer. He was already preparing to scatter her children to the four winds. $50, Finch called, his voice rising to a desperate pitch. Final offer. A wife, a mother, 7 workers in one. Surely there must be somewhere. Ain't nobody paying $50 for that. The voice came from the crowd. A big man in a beaver skin coat, arms crossed over his barrel chest, tobacco juice staining his beard. He jerked his chin toward Martha with undisguised contempt. She is fat as a sow and twice as useless. He continued, playing to the crowd with the ease of a natural performer. Only thing them kids are good for is cheap labor. And 7 of them, that is 7 more mouths to feed. Do the math, gentlemen, it does not add up. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Martha felt Sarah stiffen beside her, felt Thomas trembling with rage, felt her younger children shrink against her, trying to make themselves small enough to disappear. She straightened her spine. She looked the big man dead in the eye, and she spoke. My children, she said, her voice carrying clear and strong across the square, cutting through the wind and the laughter and the cruelty, are worth more than every man in this crowd combined. Silence fell like a hammer. The man in the beaver coat blinked his smug expression, faltering. He had not expected her to fight back. None of them had. They had expected her to cower, to weep, to accept their verdict with the meek submission of a woman who knew her place. They did not know Martha Holloway. Why, you uppity? The man started, his face reddening with anger. But before he could finish his insult, something changed in the crowd. A ripple of unease passing through the assembled men like wind through wheat. Heads turning, eyes shifting toward the back of the square. Martha followed their gaze. Near the general store, half hidden in shadow, a figure stood watching. Tall, dark coat, face she could not quite see from this distance, but she could feel his eyes on her. Heavy, assessing, not with the hungry cruelty of Horace Webb, but with something else entirely. Something she could not name. Who is that, she wondered. As if in answer to her unspoken question, a whisper passed through the crowd. That is Blackwood. Marcus Blackwood. The name meant nothing to Martha, but she saw the reaction it provoked. The way men suddenly found reasons to look elsewhere. The way conversations died mid-sentence. The way the very air seemed to grow colder wherever the shadow stood. Going once, Finch called weakly, his voice cracking. Martha's heart slammed against her ribs. This was it. This was the moment when her family would be torn apart. When everything she had fought for, everything she had sacrificed, would amount to nothing. Going twice. Sarah made a sound beside her, a small, wounded animal sound that would haunt Martha's nightmares for years to come. She closed her eyes. She prayed. And that was when the voice came. $300. Martha's eyes flew open. The voice had come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Deep as thunder rolling across mountain valleys. Rough as gravel scraped from a riverbed. It cut through the January wind like a blade, silencing every other sound in the square. Every head turned. A man walked forward from the far edge of the crowd, not the shadow near the store. Someone else. Someone Martha had not noticed before, though she could not imagine how she had missed him. He was tall, broad through the shoulders in a way that spoke of years of hard labor. He wore buckskin and weathered leather, a fur-lined coat hanging open despite the bitter cold, as if the winter could not touch him. Dark hair fell past his collar, streaked with silver at the temples. His face looked like it had been carved from granite by an angry god who had lost patience halfway through. Hard jaw, sharp cheekbones, a thin scar running from the corner of his left eye down to his cheekbone, white against weathered skin. But it was his eyes that stopped Martha's breath in her chest. Gray, pale gray, like a winter sky in the moment before a storm breaks. And they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the square, the only person in the world. The crowd parted for him as he walked, not with the fearful deference they had shown to the shadow near the store. This was something different, something older, like water flowing around a stone that had stood in the same spot for 1,000 years and would stand there for 1,000 more. Nobody touched him. Nobody spoke to him. They simply moved aside and watched their faces, a mixture of surprise and wariness, and something that looked almost like awe. Did he say 300? Finch's voice cracked like a boy's, his professional composure finally shattering. Sir, did you say? I am sorry, I must have misheard. You heard me. The stranger stopped at the base of the platform. His voice carried no warmth but no cruelty either. Just fact, immutable as stone. $300 in gold, for the woman and all 7 children. A gasp rippled through the crowd. That is, Finch swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his thin throat. That is 4 times the asking price, sir. 4 times. Are you certain? I know what it is. The stranger reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. The coins inside clinked heavily against each other, a sound that made several men in the crowd lean forward with naked greed in their eyes. 300 in gold. Count it if you want, but count fast. He looked up at the sky where dark clouds were gathering above the mountain peaks. Storm is coming, and I do not intend to be here when it hits. Martha stared at him. This stranger who had just paid a fortune for a woman the entire town had declared worthless. This man with the granite face and the storm-gray eyes, who had appeared from nowhere to save her family from destruction. Who are you? The words came out before she could stop them, before she could consider whether it was wise to question a man who had just bought her like livestock at a county fair. The stranger looked up at her. Those gray eyes held hers without flinching, without judgment, without the hungry assessment she had grown accustomed to from men who looked at women and saw only what they could take. Name is Stone, he said. Elijah Stone. Folks call me Eli. Behind Martha, Thomas sucked in a sharp breath. Stone, he whispered. The mountain man. The stranger's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. That what they call me. They say you killed. Thomas stopped when Martha squeezed his arm hard. But the damage was done. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Killed. Eli's expression did not change. If the accusation bothered him, he gave no sign. They say a lot of things, he said simply. Are they true? Martha asked the question before she could stop herself. Because she needed to know. Because she was about to put her children's lives in this man's hands, and she needed to know what kind of hands they were. Eli held her gaze for a long moment, The wind howled around them. The crowd watched in breathless silence. And in that moment, Martha saw something flicker in the depths of those gray eyes. Something old, something wounded, something that made her heart clench in recognition. Some of them, he said quietly, but I do not lie about what I am. I do not hurt women. I do not hurt children. And I keep my word. Martha felt her children pressing against her, felt their fear and confusion and desperate fragile hope. 7 young lives depending on her to make the right choice. 7 hearts that would break if she chose wrong. Why, she asked, why would you pay $300 for a woman nobody wants? Something shifted in those gray eyes, something that looked almost like pain. Because I know what it is like, he said, his voice dropping so low that only she could hear. To be the one nobody wants. Martha's throat tightened. Before she could respond, before she could ask the 1,000 questions burning in her mind, Horace Webb shouldered his way forward, his face red with indignation. This is highly irregular, Webb blustered. Mr. Stone has a reputation. The territorial office has concerns about. Mr. Stone has gold. Finch was already counting coins, his thin fingers trembling, with barely suppressed greed. More than gold. This is, he looked up, eyes wide. This is all here. More than enough. The sale stands. A new voice cut through the commotion. Everyone turned. Reverend Thomas Whitmore stood at the edge of the platform. 60 years old, white-haired, his face lined with the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from watching too many tragedies unfold and being powerless to stop them. The law is clear. Whitmore said, his voice steady and sure. Highest bidder takes the contract. Unless Mrs. Holloway objects. He turned to look at Martha, and in his eyes she saw something she had not seen in the eyes of anyone else that day. Respect. All eyes turned to her. Martha looked at Eli Stone, at his scarred face and his storm-gray eyes, and his hands that looked capable of violence, but had not moved toward any weapon. She looked at her children. 7 faces, 7 lives. 7 reasons to fight and survive and keep going no matter what. She looked at Webb and his papers, at the words she could read even from here. Orphan Placement Act, Work Farm Assignment, Foundling Home Transfer. I do not object, Martha said clearly, her voice carrying across the square. I accept. Eli nodded once. Then let us go. The paperwork took only minutes. Martha's hands shook as she signed the forms that would bind her to a stranger for the rest of her life. Martha Josephine Holloway. She wondered if she would ever write that name again. As she stepped down from the platform, a hand caught her arm. Helena Marsh, head of the Copper Falls Bride Society, sharp-featured face, sharper tongue. She had been one of the loudest voices calling for Martha's children to be properly placed with suitable families. You do not know what you are doing. Mrs. Marsh hissed her fingers as digging into Martha's arm hard enough to bruise. That man is dangerous. He lives alone in the mountains like an animal. He has not spoken to another soul in years. There are stories. There are always stories. Martha pulled her arm free, her voice hard as iron. People told stories about me too. That I was lazy, that I was worthless, that my children were burdens the world would be better off without. That is different. Is it? Martha stepped closer, her voice dropping low. Every person in this square looked at me today and saw something to throw away. That man looked at me and saw something worth saving. She met Mrs. Marsh's eyes without flinching. You want to tell me who I should trust? Mrs. Marsh's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Martha did not wait for her to find words. Eli had a wagon waiting at the edge of the square. 2 sturdy draft horses stamped their hooves in the cold breath steaming in the frigid air. The wagon bed was loaded with supplies, sacks of flour, salt, dried pork, blankets, tools, everything needed for a long journey into the wilderness. He lifted the younger children into the wagon one by one. Rose first, her small face pale with exhaustion and fear. Then Violet clinging to her twin like she would never let go. He settled them on a pile of blankets in the wagon bed, handling them as gently as if they were made of glass. Lily climbed up next, her golden curls bouncing her 6-year-old optimism, somehow still intact despite everything. She immediately began arranging the blankets into what she called a proper fort. William came after, still pale and weak from the cold, but steadier now. 8 years old with his father's brown eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. He settled next to his sisters, without a word automatically pulling them closer to share warmth. Lucy scrambled up without assistance, then stood with her hands on her hips, surveying the wagon bed like a queen inspecting her kingdom. "This will do," she announced with all the authority her 10 years could muster. For now, Eli's mouth twitched again. That almost smile that Martha was beginning to recognize. He turned to her and offered his hand. Martha hesitated. This was the moment, the point of no return. Once she took that hand, once she climbed into that wagon, there would be no going back. She would be bound to this stranger, this mountain man with his scarred face and his dangerous reputation, and whatever fate awaited them in the wilderness. She thought of Henry, of the man she had loved, the man who had given her 7 children and then left her alone to raise them. She thought of the promises they had made to each other on their wedding day, to have and to hold, for better or for worse, till death do us part. Death had parted them 3 years ago, and now she was about to make new promises to a man she did not know in a ceremony witnessed only by God and the uncaring winter sky. She took his hand. His palm was rough, calloused from years of hard work, warm despite the bitter cold, as if the fire that burned inside him could not be extinguished by anything so simple as weather. "Thank you," she said quietly as he helped her onto the wagon seat. "Do not thank me yet." His voice was gruff but not unkind. "It is a 2-day ride, hard country, and I do not make promises I cannot keep." Martha settled onto the seat beside him, adjusting her skirts against the cold. "Neither do I." He looked at her then, really looked, and something flickered in those gray eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "Mama," Sarah's voice came from the wagon bed, tight with fear. "There is a man watching us." Martha turned. Near the general store, the shadow she had noticed earlier had moved into the light, and now she could see him clearly. Marcus Blackwood. She knew it without being told, knew it from the way people avoided looking at him even as they moved carefully around him, knew it from the way the air seemed to grow colder wherever his gaze fell. Knew it from the smile that curved his lips, a smile that held no warmth, no humor, nothing but the cold calculation of a predator sizing up prey. He was handsome, she realized with a chill. Handsome in a way that made her skin crawl. Dark hair slicked back from a high forehead. Dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A fine coat despite the weather. A gold watch chain glinting at his vest. Everything about him spoke of wealth and power and the absolute certainty that he could take whatever he wanted from anyone he chose. He tipped his hat to Martha, a mockery of courtesy. "Mrs. Stone," he called across the square, his voice smooth as silk and just as dangerous. "Congratulations on your marriage." Martha felt Eli stiffen beside her. Blackwood. One word. Flat. Dangerous. A warning wrapped in a name. "We are leaving, so I see." Blackwood walked closer, his hands in his pockets, his terrible smile never wavering. His movements were unhurried, almost lazy, like a cat that knew its prey had nowhere to run. $300, he said. "That is quite an investment for—" His eyes slid over Martha, slow and deliberate. "Damaged goods." Thomas lunged forwards in the wagon bed, his young face twisted with fury. "You take that back." Martha grabbed his arm. "Thomas, no. But Mama, I know what he said." She kept her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. "And it does not matter." Blackwood laughed softly. The sound made Martha think of snakes sliding through dead leaves. Loyal children, he observed, his dark eyes moving from Thomas to Sarah, lingering there in a way that made Martha's blood turn to ice. "That is good. Loyalty is a valuable trait in the young." Martha moved before she could think, stepping between Blackwood and the wagon, putting herself directly in his line of sight, blocking his view of her daughter. "My children are not for sale." "Everything is for sale, Mrs. Stone." Blackwood's smile widened, revealing teeth that were too white, too perfect. "It is just a matter of finding the right price." Eli climbed onto the wagon seat. His hand rested on the rifle beside him. Casual, easy. But Martha saw the way his knuckles went white around the stock. "Walk away, Blackwood." Or what Blackwood spread his hands, the picture of innocence. "You will shoot me in front of all these good people, in front of the Reverend, in front of the children. I will do what needs doing." Eli picked up the reins, his gray eyes never leaving Blackwood's face. Same as always. For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind howled through the square. The crowd watched in breathless silence. The tension stretched taut as a bowstring ready to snap. Then Blackwood stepped back, his smile never fading. "Safe travels, Mrs. Stone," he called, as Eli snapped the reins and the horses lurched forward. "I am sure we will meet again." He turned and walked away. The crowd parted for him as they had parted for Eli, but there was a difference Martha could feel, even if she could not name it. With Eli, the parting had been respect mixed with wariness. With Blackwood, it was pure fear. Martha let out a breath she had not known she was holding. Copper Falls fell away behind them as the wagon rolled north, and she did not look back. But she could not shake the feeling that she had just met a man far more dangerous than any mountain wilderness, and that their paths would cross again. For 10 minutes, neither Martha nor Eli spoke. The wagon creaked and groaned over frozen ruts. The horses' hooves crunched through mud that had frozen solid overnight. Behind them, the children whispered among themselves, their voices small and scared in the vast silence of the Montana wilderness. "Who is he?" Martha finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest since Blackwood had smiled at her with those cold, dead eyes. Marcus Blackwood. Eli's jaw tightened. A man who takes what he wants and hurts anyone who gets in his way. What does he want? Power? Money? Women? Eli's hands flexed on the reins. He owns half this territory through fear and debt. Runs saloons, gambling halls, other businesses. I will not name with children listening. Martha's stomach turned. He was looking at Sarah. I know. Will he come after us? Eli was quiet for a long moment. The wagon rolled on. The mountains grew closer, their peaks sharp against the gray winter sky. When he spoke, his voice was hard as iron. Probably. Martha felt ice spread through her chest. The same ice that had formed there three years ago when Henry had died in her arms, leaving her alone with 7 children and a mountain of debt. Then why did you buy us? She demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. Why bring us out here, away from the town and away from people who might help if he comes? Because people in that town will not help. Eli did not look at her, but his voice softened slightly. They are afraid of him. They have been afraid of him for years. And fear makes people do terrible things to each other. He glanced at her, then those gray eyes unreadable. Besides, my land is the only place in this territory he does not control. How is that possible? Because he learned a long time ago that coming onto my property costs more than it is worth. Martha studied his profile, the hard set of his jaw, the scars on his face and hands, the way he held himself like a man who expected violence and was ready to meet it. What happened? She asked quietly. Between you and him? Eli did not answer for a long time. The wagon rolled on. The mountains grew closer. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of snow. He wanted something of mine, Eli finally said. I did not let him take it. What did he want? Does not matter now. His voice closed the subject like a door slamming shut. What matters is he knows better than to follow me home. Martha wanted to push, wanted answers, wanted to know exactly what kind of man she had just bound herself to. But something in his face stopped her, a pain so old and so deep that she recognized it immediately. It was the same pain she saw in her own mirror every morning, the pain of loss. Instead of pressing, she turned to check on her children. They had arranged themselves in the wagon bed with the efficiency of a small army. Sarah sat in the center, Rose and Violet in her lap, their small bodies curled against her for warmth. Thomas and Lucy flanked them like guards, their young faces set with determination. William pressed close to his sisters, still pale but no longer shivering. Lily sat at the tailgate, her legs dangling over the edge, watching the road behind them with a 6-year-old's fierce concentration. Lily, Martha called. Sit properly, please. I am watching for bad men, Lily announced cheerfully, the man with the scary smile. If he comes, I will see him first. There are no bad men behind us. Not yet, Lily agreed, her golden curls bouncing as she nodded. But if they come, I will be ready. Lucy snorted. What are you going to do? Throw your bonnet at them. I will throw rocks. I can throw better than Thomas. You cannot. Can too. Cannot. Remember when I hit that crow from 30 feet away? You missed every single time. That crow was sick. It was practically begging to be hit. Enough, Eli's voice cut through the argument. Not harsh but firm, carrying an authority that made both girls fall silent immediately. Save your energy. You are going to need it. The children went quiet, staring at the stranger who had bought their mother with gold coins and was now taking them into the mountains. 7 pairs of eyes. 7 young faces. 7 hearts trying to decide whether to trust or to fear. William spoke first. Small voice, trembling. "Sir, where are we going?" Eli glanced back at him. "My homestead, 2 days north. Is it nice? It is safe, but is it nice?" Something shifted in Eli's face. Something almost soft. "It is home. That is better than nice." William considered this with the gravity only an 8-year-old could muster. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay, I believe you." Something flickered in Eli's eyes, surprise maybe, or gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly. And Martha felt something shift in her chest, something that might have been the first fragile tendril of hope she had allowed herself to feel in 3 years. The wagon rolled on, carrying them deeper into the wilderness. Behind them, Copper Falls disappeared into the winter haze. Ahead, the mountains waited white-peaked and ancient. And somewhere in between, a storm was gathering, both in the sky above and in the darkness that was Marcus Blackwood. The sun was sinking behind the mountains when Eli pulled the wagon to a stop. There he said quietly, "That is home." Martha looked up and her breath caught in her throat. The homestead sat on a ridge overlooking a small valley that stretched toward distant peaks. A cabin built of hand-hewn logs stood solid and square against the darkening sky. A barn to the left, fenced pasture beyond, smoke rising from a stone chimney thin and white against the purple twilight. Mountains stood guard on 3 sides like ancient sentinels who had watched over this land since before memory began. "Mama." Lily's voice was hushed with wonder. "It is beautiful." Martha could not speak. She had expected a shack, a rough shelter barely fit for animals. She had prepared herself for hardship, for suffering, for survival at its most basic. 3 years of poverty had taught her to expect nothing and hope for less. She had not prepared for this. "You built all of this?" Thomas asked, disbelief cracking through his carefully maintained composure. "By yourself, 8 years." Eli clicked the reins, and the horses moved forward, their hooves finding the familiar path up the ridge. Had time and nothing but time. But the cabin alone must have taken 2 years for the main structure, another 6 months for the barn. Fences took 3 summers. He shrugged, the movement almost imperceptible. Work goes slow when you are alone. Martha felt something shift in her chest, a recognition that went deeper than words. This was not just a homestead. This was 8 years of grief poured into wood and stone. 8 years of a man trying to build something, anything, to fill the emptiness inside him. 8 years of loneliness given physical form. "There is only one way up," Eli said, gesturing to the trail behind them. "Cliff drops on the other 3 sides." "A man with a rifle could hold this position against an army. Is that why you built here?" "Partly." He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the cabin. "Mostly I just like the view." Lucy scrambled out of the wagon before anyone could stop her. She ran to the edge of the ridge and stood there, her red hair whipping in the wind, staring out at the valley below with an expression of pure wonder. "I can see forever," she shouted. "Mama, come look. I can see the whole world from here." "Lucy, get away from that edge." "She is fine." Eli climbed down from the wagon seat and offered Martha his hand. "Ground is solid there. I checked it 100 times. Martha hesitated, then accepted his help. "Why did you check it 100 times?" Eli's jaw tightened. A muscle flickered beneath the scar on his cheek. "Mary used to run to that spot every morning. Said she could see angels dancing in the clouds." The name hung in the air between them. Heavy, sacred. Martha's heart clenched. "Oh, Eli, it is all right." His voice was gruff, but she heard the crack beneath the surface. It was a long time ago, but it was not all right. She could see it in his eyes. 8 years and the wound was still raw, still bleeding. The children piled out of the wagon one by one. Sarah carried the twins, one on each hip, her thin arms straining under their weight. Thomas helped William down. Lily had already run off to join Lucy at the ridge edge, ignoring Martha's warnings with cheerful defiance. Eli moved to the cabin door. He paused with his hand on the latch, his back to them. "It is not much," he said. "Been living alone a long time. Probably does not look like a place fit for children. Let us be the judge of that." Martha moved to stand beside him. He pushed open the door. The inside was dim, lit only by the fading sunlight through 2 small windows. Martha stepped in, letting her eyes adjust. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, cold now, but clean, ready for a fire. A rough-hewn table with 2 chairs. A bed in the corner, neatly made with a worn quilt that looked like it had been lovingly stitched by hands that were no longer there. Shelves lined with supplies, flour, salt, dried beans. Hooks on the wall holding tools, a coat, a spare rifle. Everything was clean, everything was ordered, everything was lonely. Like I said, Eli's voice was rough with embarrassment. Not much. Martha walked to the center of the room, turning slowly, taking it all in. The care that had gone into every corner. The order that spoke of a mind trying desperately to control something, anything in a world that had taken everything that mattered. It is perfect, she said. Eli blinked. What? It is solid. It is warm. It is safe, she met his eyes. After everything we have been through, that is all that matters. But there is only one bed, only two chairs. I do not have. We will manage. Martha was already rolling up her sleeves, her mind shifting into the mode that had kept her family alive through 3 years of poverty. First, we need a fire, then food. Then we will worry about beds. Within an hour, the cabin had transformed. A fire roared in the hearth, casting warm light across the room and pushing back the cold that had seeped into Martha's bones during the long journey. The table was covered with supplies being sorted and organized. Children's voices filled the space, bickering, laughing, asking questions. Life had returned to a place that had been empty for far too long. Eli stood by the door, watching his cabin fill with chaos and noise and warmth. His expression was unreadable, half wonder, half something that looked almost like fear, like a man who had stumbled into someone else's dream and was terrified of waking up. Are you all right? Martha asked quietly, coming to stand beside him. 8 years. His voice was distant, his gray eyes fixed on the children as they moved through his space, touching his things, breathing his air. 8 years alone. And now you have 7 children who are going to turn this place upside down. Martha smiled softly. I apologize in advance. The corner of Eli's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Do not apologize. He stopped, swallowed hard. I forgot what children's laughter sounds like, Mr. Stone. A small voice interrupted them. Eli looked down. Rose stood at his feet, her 4-year-old face tilted up toward him, her gray eyes so like his own it made Martha's heart ache, studying him with solemn intensity. Are you okay? I am fine. His voice came out rough. You look scared. I am not scared. My mama says it is okay to be scared sometimes. Rose tilted her head, considering him with the particular wisdom that only very young children possess. She says scared just means you care about something. Eli crouched down to her level, bringing his scarred face close to hers. Your mama's a smart woman. I know. Rose smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. Are you going to be our new papa? The question hit Eli like a physical blow. Martha saw it, saw the way his whole body went rigid, saw the flash of pain in his eyes there, and gone so fast she might have imagined it. I do not know, his voice cracked. That is up to your mama. Rose considered this with the gravity of a tiny philosopher pondering the mysteries of the universe. Okay, but I hope you are. She reached out and patted his cheek with her small hand. You have nice eyes. Then she whispered away to join her twin, leaving Eli crouched on the floor, his hand pressed to the cheek she had touched, struggling to remember how to breathe. Martha appeared beside him. Sorry about that. Rose says whatever comes into her head, it is fine. He stood slowly, his movement stiff. She is a good kid. They all are. Martha paused. She is right, though. About what? You do have nice eyes. Heat crept up Eli's neck, a flush that looked completely out of place on his granite features. I should check on the horses. He fled before Martha could respond. Outside, the cold air hit him like a slap. He leaned against the barn door, pressing his palms flat against the rough wood, forcing himself to breathe. 8 years alone. And now his cabin was full of children, full of laughter, full of life. He did not know if he could do this. He did not know if he could bear to lose it again. You all right? He turned. Thomas stood a few feet away, a bucket in each hand, his young face unreadable in the fading light. Fine. Just needed air. Thomas nodded slowly, setting down the buckets. It is a lot. All of us, I mean. We are a lot. You are not a lot. We are, though. Thomas leaned against the fence, his 12-year-old shoulders carrying a weight no child should have to bear. 7 kids, Mama, with no husband, nothing but the clothes on our backs, and a wagon full of trouble. He kicked at a rock, sending it skittering across the frozen ground. You did not know what you were getting into when you bid on us. I knew exactly what I was getting into. Then White Thomas's voice cracked, and for a moment the tough facade he had been wearing slipped, revealing the scared boy underneath. Why us? Why pay $300 for a family that is nothing but problems? Eli was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the mountains black against the darkening sky, looked at the stars beginning to appear one by one like tiny fires lit in the heavens. You know what it is like to be alone? He asked finally. Thomas shook his head. It is quiet, real quiet. At first you think you like it. No one bothering you, no one needing anything from you, just you and the wind and the work. Sounds peaceful. It is. For a while. Eli turned to face him, his gray eyes reflecting the dying light. Then one day you wake up and you realize you have not spoken to another human being in 3 months. You realize you have forgotten what your own voice sounds like. You realize that if you died tomorrow, no one would know. No one would care. You would just rot in that cabin until some trapper stumbled across your bones years later. Thomas said nothing, but his eyes were wide. That is not peace, Eli continued, his voice dropping lower. That is death, slow death, the kind that kills you from the inside while your body keeps walking around. He paused. Your family is not a problem, son. Your family is life. Loud, messy, complicated life. And I would rather have that than one more day of quiet. Thomas's eyes glistened in the fading light. He blinked rapidly, trying to force back tears that had no place in the face he was trying to show the world. My papa died 3 years ago, he said quietly. I was 9. I tried to take care of my mom and the others, but I could not. I was not big enough, not strong enough. I watched them go hungry because I could not find work. Watched Mama sell everything we owned just to keep us fed. His voice broke. I am supposed to be the man of the family, and I failed. You did not fail. I did. Thomas, Eli stepped forward, gripping the boy's shoulder. You were 9 years old, 9, and you tried to carry a burden that grown men could not handle. That is not failure, that is courage. But I could not. Listen to me. Eli's voice was fierce, intense, in a way that made Thomas look up startled. You kept going. That is what matters. You did not give up. You did not abandon your family. You stayed and you fought, and you are still fighting. He squeezed the boy's shoulder. That makes you more of a man than half the fools in that town who walked past your mother today. Thomas's tears spilled over. He did not try to hide them this time. I do not know how to stop being scared. I have been scared for so long I do not remember what anything else feels like. You do not stop being scared. You just learn to move anyway. Eli held his gaze. And now you do not have to do it alone. Thomas wiped his face roughly with his sleeve. You really want us here? All of us. I really do. Even when Lucy will not stop talking, and the twins cry at everything, and Lily asks 1,000 questions. Eli's mouth twitched. Even then. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then quietly, I think I could learn to trust you. I think you already have. They walked back to the cabin together. The door opened to warmth and light, and the smell of something cooking over the fire. There you are, Martha called from beside the hearth where she was stirring a pot of beans. I was about to send the search party. Thomas, wash your hands. Dinner is almost ready. Yes, Mama. Eli hesitated in the doorway. Martha had transformed his cold, empty cabin into something unrecognizable. Blankets spread across the floor for the children. Clothes hanging near the fire to dry. Food laid out on the table. Simple fare but warm. Welcoming. Home. Do not just stand there, Martha said without looking up. Come eat. He came. Dinner was chaos. 7 children talking over each other, reaching for food, arguing about who got the bigger piece of bread. Martha moved through it like a general commanding troops, a sharp word here, a gentle touch there, somehow keeping order without ever raising her voice. Eli watched fascinated. You are good at this, he said quietly, leaning close so only she could hear. Practice, she handed Violet a cup of water. 14 years of practice. Does it get easier? Oh, it gets easier. She smiled, a real smile that lit up her tired face. But it never gets quiet. After dinner, Martha settled the children for bed. The younger ones first. Rose and Violet curled together on a blanket near the fire, their small bodies intertwined like puppies in a litter. Lily sprawled between them, already snoring softly. William next, still pale but no longer shivering. Then Lucy, who protested loudly before falling asleep mid-sentence. Thomas insisted on staying up to keep watch. Martha did not argue. She just handed him a blanket and told him to wake Eli if he heard anything. Sarah sat by the fire mending a tear in William's shirt. Her hands moved with practiced ease, but her eyes were distant. Far away, Sarah. Martha sat beside her daughter. What is wrong? Nothing, Sarah. Her daughter sighed, setting down the needle. I keep thinking about what that man said. Blackwood, she hugged herself, her thin arms wrapped tight around her chest. About how everything is for sale. About finding the right price. Martha's stomach tightened. He was trying to scare us. It worked. Sarah's voice trembled. Mama, what if he comes back? What if he finds a way to get to us? What if... He will not. You do not know that. I know Eli will protect us. Eli is one man. Blackwood has dozens. Eli has us. Martha gripped her daughter's hands. Listen to me. We are not helpless. We are not victims. We are survivors. And we will fight for each other with everything we have. But I am scared, Mama. I know, baby. So am I. Martha pulled her close. But being scared together is better than being scared alone. Sarah buried her face in her mother's shoulder. For a moment, she was not 14 and too grown. She was just a child seeking comfort in the only place that had ever been safe. I love you, Mama. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you will ever know. After Sarah fell asleep, Martha found Eli outside on the porch. He sat on an old wooden chair, rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the ridge. You should sleep, she said, settling beside him on the rough planks. Cannot. Not tonight. Blackwood maybe. Maybe just habit. He shifted the rifle. I have not slept well in 8 years, since they died. It was not a question. Eli was silent for a long moment. The wind carried the smell of pine and snow. Stars blazed overhead, more than Martha had ever seen in her life, a river of light spilling across the black sky. 8 years ago, Eli said, finally, his voice sounding like it came from somewhere very far away. I had a family, a wife named Rebecca, a daughter named Mary. She was 3 years old. Martha did not speak. She just listened. We lived at Fort Laramie. I worked as a guide for wagon trains heading west. Knew this country like the back of my hand. Rebecca hated when I left, but she understood. It was how I fed my family. He paused. Then the fever came. Scarlet fever. It swept through the fort like wildfire through dry grass. I was leading a wagon train through South Pass when it started. By the time I got the news, by the time I made it back, his voice cracked. Martha reached out, slowly, carefully. She placed her hand over his. She kept Mary alive for 3 days after she got sick herself. Eli continued, his voice rough as gravel. 3 days through sheer force of will. But in the end, the fever took them both. I got back just in time to bury them. Oh, Eli, but that is not all. He turned to look at her, his gray eyes full of ghosts. There is a reason I was at South Pass when my family needed me. A reason I was not home to protect them. Martha waited, her heart pounding. Marcus Blackwood. The name fell between them like a stone into still water. He hired me to lead that wagon train, paid triple the usual rate, insisted on me personally. I thought it was an opportunity. Enough money for Rebecca to rest, for Mary to have new clothes. His voice turned bitter as ash. I was a fool. What do you mean it was a trap? Blackwood did not need a guide. He wanted me gone. He wanted Rebecca. Martha felt ice spread through her veins. Rebecca turned him down a year before, at a dance in Denver. She told him he made her skin crawl, that she would rather die than let him touch her. She said it in front of everyone, and he never forgot. Marcus Blackwood never forgets. Eli's hand tightened on the rifle. When I was gone, he came to the fort, stood outside our cabin every night, did not do anything, just watched. Rebecca wrote to me begging me to come home. But the letter took 3 weeks to reach South Pass, and by then, the fever had started. Some people said Blackwood brought sick people into the fort deliberately. I never could prove it, but I know. I know in my bones that he did something. Rebecca and Mary died, and he stood back and watched, satisfied that if he could not have her, no one else would either. Martha could not speak, could not breathe, could not do anything but hold his hand and let her tears fall. After Eli said, I went looking for him, hunted him for 6 months, and when I found him, he stopped. What happened? I killed 3 of his men before they could touch their guns. And Blackwood, Eli's jaw tightened. I left him with a scar that runs from his shoulder to his hip. He knows if he comes near me again, I will finish what I started. Martha understood now. Everything made sense. There is something else you should know about Blackwood, Eli said quietly. Something that might help you understand what we are dealing with. Martha waited. 20 years ago, Marcus Blackwood was just a boy, son of a poor miner in Pennsylvania. His father died in a cave and when Marcus was 15. His mother, she was beautiful, too beautiful for her own good, in a world that devours beautiful things. Eli's voice hardened. She sold herself to the mine owner to feed her son. Marcus watched her be used, humiliated, and eventually discarded like broken furniture when she was no longer young enough to please. She died in poverty and shame when he was 20. Martha felt something unexpected stir in her chest. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding. He became what he is because he swore he would never be powerless again, Eli continued. In his mind, you either hold the hammer or you are the nail. There is no middle ground. That does not excuse what he has done. No, it does not. But it explains why he wants what he cannot have. Dignity, respect, love, things money cannot buy. Martha looked toward the window, toward the darkness where Blackwood lurked. He will never stop, she whispered. Number. He will not. That is why we have to be ready. The way Blackwood had kept his distance, the flicker of fear beneath his smile, the history that hung between the 2 men like a blade waiting to fall. 5 years, she whispered. You told me 5 years ago he wanted something of yours. He wanted revenge. He sent men to this homestead 3 times. Each time they did not come back. Eventually he learned the lesson. But now he has new motivation. Eli's eyes darkened. He saw you on that auction block, standing tall while the whole world tried to break you. He saw something he wants, dignity, strength, something he can never have no matter how much money or power he accumulates. And Sarah, you remind him of Rebecca at that age. His voice caught. Brown hair, clear eyes. When I look at your daughter, I see what Rebecca was, what Mary might have become. Martha felt tears streaming down her face. She did not try to stop them. You did not buy me because you were lonely, she said softly. You bought me because you saw a chance to save what you could not save 8 years ago. Eli turned away, but not fast enough. She saw the moisture in his eyes. I do not know why I did it, he admitted. I just know when I saw you holding those children, fighting for them with nothing but your pride, I thought this is someone worth saving. This is a family that deserves to live. Martha raised her hand to his face, touched the scar on his cheek. Gently, like she was touching something precious. You deserve to live too, Elijah Stone. You deserve to love again. You deserve a family. You cannot know that. I can, she smiled through her tears, because I look at you and I see a man who has been fighting in the darkness for 8 years and still has not lost the ability to see light in others. That is rare. That is beautiful. They sat together as the stars wheeled overhead. Not kissing, not speaking, just breathing together. 2 broken people finding something whole in the space between them. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Eli taught Martha to shoot. She had known the basics, things her father had shown her years ago, but Eli's instruction was different. Precise, patient, focused. Do not aim for the body, he told her. Too easy to miss or just wound. Aim for center mass and squeeze. Do not pull. What if I freeze? You will not. How do you know? Because you are a mother, and mothers do not freeze when their children are in danger. They fight. By the 3rd day, Martha could hit a target at 50 yards more often than she missed. Sarah learned too, and Lucy, despite Martha's protests. I am 10. Lucy argued, her red hair blazing in the winter sun. I am practically grown. You are a child. I am a child who is going to shoot anyone who tries to hurt my sisters. Martha could not argue with that logic. Even William helped carrying ammunition and water, keeping watch from the ridge. Lily entertained the twins with songs and stories, keeping them calm and distracted. They were becoming something. Not just a family, an army. They are amazing. Eli stood beside Martha on the evening of the third day watching the children work in the yard below. They are survivors. Martha watched Thomas help Eli repair the fence, the two of them working in comfortable silence. Watched Lucy teach Lily how to throw properly. Watched Sarah read to the younger ones by the fire. Life has not given us any other choice. That is not what I mean. Eli turned to look at her. They are amazing because you raised them. You gave them strength, courage, the refusal to accept limits. I just did what any mother would do. Number. His voice softened. You did more. You loved them enough to fight, enough to endure, enough to never give up. That is a rare gift. Martha felt heat rise to her cheeks. You are too kind. I am honest. He hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. And I am grateful for the chance to be part of this. Before Martha could respond, Lucy's voice rang out from the ridge. Mama, there are riders coming. Martha's blood turned to ice. She ran to the edge, Eli beside her, dust rising from the valley, horses moving fast, a dozen men, maybe more. And at the front, riding a black horse wearing that terrible smile, Marcus Blackwood. He had found them. Eli. Martha screamed, already running toward the cabin. Eli. He burst through the door before she reached it, rifle in hand, face carved from granite. I see them. Get the children inside. Bar the door. Eli. Now Martha. She did not argue. She ran. Inside, she shouted, her voice cracking like a whip. Everyone inside. Now the children moved. Thank God they moved. 3 days of preparation had not dulled their survival instincts. Sarah scooped up both twins in one motion. Thomas dropped the bucket he was carrying and grabbed William. Lucy sprinted across the yard, red hair flying. Lily stumbled on a rock and Martha caught her, swept her up, kept running. Within 30 seconds, all 7 children were in the cabin. Martha slammed the door, threw the heavy wooden bar across it. Mama! Rose's voice trembled. What is happening? Bad men are coming. No point in lying. No point in false comfort. But we are going to be okay. She did not believe it. But faith, even borrowed faith, was better than despair. Outside, Eli had positioned himself behind a stack of firewood near the barn. Good cover. Clear sight lines down the trail. He raised his rifle and waited. The riders came. Marcus Blackwood rode at the front, that terrible smile stretched across his face like a wound. Behind him, a dozen men spread out in a loose formation. Men, dangerous, eyes fixed on the cabin with the hunger of wolves who had cornered their prey. Stone. Blackwood called out, pulling his horse to a stop at the edge of rifle range. It has been a few days. Miss me, Eli's answer was to sight his rifle. The click of the hammer echoed across the ridge like a declaration of war. Now, Blackwood spread his hands, the picture of innocence. No need for hostility. I just came to talk. You brought 12 men to talk. Protection. These mountains are dangerous. Blackwood's smile widened. You of all people should know that. Say what you came to say, then leave. Straight to business. I like that. Blackwood leaned forward in his saddle. Here's the thing, Stone. I have been thinking about our little arrangement. You paid $300 for that woman and her brats. Fair and square, legal and binding. He paused. But I am prepared to make you an offer. Inside the cabin, Martha pressed her eye to a crack in the shutters. Her heart hammered against her ribs. $500, cash, right now, for the woman and the oldest girl. You keep the rest. Plenty of hands to work your land. Sarah made a sound, a small terrified whimper. Martha grabbed her daughter's hand, squeezed hard. He will not take you, she whispered fiercely. Over my dead body. Outside, Eli had not moved. His rifle stayed trained on Blackwood's chest. They are not for sale, not for any price. Everything is for sale, Stone. You just have not found your number yet. Then let me be clear. Eli's voice dropped low and cold. If any of your men come one step closer, I start shooting. And you are first. Blackwood studied him. That predator's gaze assessing, calculating. You cannot kill all of us. You might get 2 or 3 if you are lucky. Then my boys put you down and take what they want anyway. Maybe. Eli shrugged. But you will still be dead. And dead men do not collect debts. Do not run businesses. Do not hurt women and children." He paused. "You willing to bet your life on how fast I can pull this trigger?" Silence stretched across the ridge. The wind howled through the trees. The horses stamped nervously. The men behind Blackwood exchanged uneasy glances. "This is not over," Blackwood said finally. "It is for tonight. Storm will not last forever, Stone, and neither will your luck." He gathered his reins. "I will be seeing you, Mrs. Stone." His eyes found Martha through the crack in the shutters. "You and those pretty children of yours." Then he wheeled his horse around and the riders disappeared down the trail, swallowed by the gathering darkness. Eli stood motionless, rifle still raised, long after the last rider had disappeared down the trail. Martha watched him, watched the way his hands trembled slightly, the way his jaw worked as if he were chewing on words he could not speak. "Eli." He did not respond. She moved closer slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "Eli, they are gone." "I know." His voice was hollow. "For a moment," he said quietly, "when I saw him riding up that trail, I was not here anymore. I was back at Fort Laramie, standing over 2 graves, promising Rebecca that I would make him pay." He lowered the rifle at last. "I have spent 8 years waiting for a chance to kill that man. 8 years dreaming about it, planning it. And tonight, when I had the shot, when I could have ended it, why did you not?" "Because you were behind me." He turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw something she had not expected. Not rage, not hatred, fear, because those children were in that cabin. Because for the first time in 8 years, I had something to lose that was not already gone. Martha reached for him, and this time he did not pull away. "That is not weakness," she said softly. "That is called having a reason to live." Martha's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, her whole body shaking. Not from cold, from something deeper. Something that had been building since the moment she first saw Marcus Blackwood smile. "Mama." Thomas knelt beside her. "Mama, are you okay?" "I am fine." She was not fine. She was falling apart. "I am fine, baby." The door opened. Eli stepped in, rifle still in hand, face unreadable. "They are gone. For now, for now." Martha's voice cracked. "He is coming back. You heard him. He is patient. He can wait. Let him wait." Eli set the rifle by the door. "We will be ready." How Martha struggled to her feet, anger suddenly replacing fear. "How will we be ready? You are one man, Eli, one man against a dozen. What happens when he comes back with 20, 30? Then we fight and die if that is what it takes." Martha stared at him, at this man who had bought her family and was now willing to die for them. "That is not good enough," she said. "I will not let my children grow up as orphans because you decided to play hero." Eli flinched like she had slapped him. "Martha." "No, listen to me." She stepped closer, jabbing her finger into his chest. "You do not get to sacrifice yourself. You do not get to leave us alone. We just started building something here. Something real. And I will be damned if I let Marcus Blackwood or anyone else take that away. What do you want me to do? Run. I want you to think. Use that brain God gave you." Martha's eyes blazed. "There has to be another way. Something we have not considered." Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to the window, staring out at the ridge. "There might be one thing," he said slowly. "The territorial marshal. He is based in Fort Collins. 2 days' ride." Martha's heart leaped. Would he help? He might. Blackwood has been careful to stay just inside the law. But if the marshal saw him threatening a woman and children on their own land? Eli shook his head. "It is a long shot. Long shots are better than no shots." Martha grabbed his arm. "How do we reach him? I would have to ride there myself." "Leave you and the children alone for 4 days, maybe 5. No." Thomas stepped forward, his young face set with determination. "I will go, Thomas." Martha started. "I can ride. I am not as good as Mr. Stone, but I can stay on a horse. And no one is looking for me. Blackwood will not expect a 12-year-old boy to be carrying messages." Eli studied him for a long moment. "It is dangerous. Everything is dangerous now." Thomas lifted his chin. "Let me do this. Let me help." Martha's heart clenched. Her son, her brave, terrified, determined son. "No," she said it firmly. "Absolutely not." "But Mama," I said no. "I will not send you out there alone where anything could happen. I will not lose you, Thomas. I cannot." But if I do not go, we might all die anyway. Thomas's voice cracked. Then we die together. That is stupid. Thomas Samuel Holloway. It is stone now. Thomas's voice was fierce. You said so yourself. We are stones now, and stones do not hide while someone else fights their battles. The cabin went silent. Martha stared at her son, at this boy who had been forced to grow up too fast, who had carried burdens no child should carry, who was now asking to carry one more. Mama. Sarah spoke quietly from the corner where she held the twins. He is right, Sarah. If Blackwood comes back in force, we cannot win. You know that. I know that. Sarah's voice trembled but held steady. Thomas is the best chance we have. Maybe the only chance. Martha looked at her oldest daughter, at her oldest son, at all her children, watching her with trusting, terrified eyes. She looked at Eli. If anything happens to him, she whispered, nothing will happen to him. Eli moved to Thomas, gripping the boy's shoulder. I will give you my fastest horse. Directions to Fort Collins that avoid the main roads. A letter for the marshal with my seal. He knows me. Knows I do not cry wolf. He met Thomas's eyes. You would trust me with this? Thomas asked. I trusted your mother with my life the day I bought her. Trusting her son with a message seems about right. Thomas's eyes glistened, but he did not cry. I will not let you down. I know you will not. Martha grabbed her son, pulled him into a fierce embrace. You come back to me, she said against his hair. You hear me, Thomas Stone? You come back to me or I swear I will march into heaven itself and drag you home. I will come back, Mama. His arms tightened around her. I promise. They prepared him within the hour. Food for the journey, water, a knife. The letter sealed with Eli's mark. Directions repeated until Thomas could recite them in his sleep. When he mounted the horse, a sturdy bay mare named Runner, he looked both older and younger than his 12 years. Thomas. Lucy ran forward before anyone could stop her. She pressed something into his hand, for luck. He looked down, a small stone polished smooth by the river. Lucy, it is my best one. Brings good fortune. Mama says that is superstition, but I do not care. Her chin trembled. You bring it back to me. Okay. Thomas tucked the stone into his pocket. Okay, I will. One by one, the other children said their goodbyes. William gave him a hug that lasted longer than either would admit. Lily made him promise to bring her back a present, anything, even just a pretty rock. The twins waved with both hands, not quite understanding why everyone was so sad. Sarah was last. She stood before her brother, eyes bright with unshed tears. You are braver than you know, she said quietly. I am proud of you. Thomas's composure cracked just for a moment. Then he pulled it back together. Take care of them, Sarah. While I am gone, I will. He looked at Eli. Watch over my family, with my life. He looked at Martha, could not speak, just nodded once. Then he kicked his heels into Runner's flanks and rode down the trail, disappearing into the trees without looking back. Martha watched until she could not see him anymore. Then she kept watching anyway. He will make it, Eli said quietly, coming to stand beside her. You do not know that. No, but I believe it. He paused. That boy has more courage than men twice his age. He gets it from his mother. Martha wiped her eyes roughly. What now? Now we prepare. Blackwood will not wait forever, and when he comes back, we need to be ready. The next 2 days passed in agonizing tension. Martha and Eli prepared everything they could. Weapons, ammunition, water, food. They drilled the children on the escape tunnel, the secret passage Eli had dug years ago, leading to the river half a mile east. If everything falls apart, Eli told Sarah, you lead your brothers and sisters through the tunnel. You run and you do not stop until you reach Fort Collins. What about Mama? Your mama will follow. Sarah knew it was a lie. Martha knew it too. But there are lies you have to tell to survive. Promises you have to make even when you know you might not keep them. On the evening of the third day, as the sun painted the mountains gold and crimson, Lucy came running from the ridge. Mama. Her voice was high with fear. Riders coming, lots of them. Martha ran to look. In the gathering dusk, torches flickered. A procession of flames moving up the trail toward the ridge. She counted. 15, 20, 25. Her heart sank. 30 men, maybe more. Marcus Blackwood had returned, and this time he had brought an army. Martha's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. 30 riders, maybe more. Torches flickering in the darkness like the eyes of demons ascending from hell. The sound of hooves on frozen ground growing louder with every passing second. Eli. She screamed his name as she ran toward the cabin. He burst through the door before she reached it, rifle in hand, face carved from stone. I see them. Get the children to the cellar. Bar the door, Eli. Now, Martha, whatever happens, you keep them safe. What about you? I will hold them off as long as I can. That is suicide. It is necessary. He grabbed her arms, pulled her close. In the torchlight, his gray eyes burned with an intensity she had never seen before. Listen to me, there is a way out of the cellar. A tunnel I dug years ago. It comes out by the river half a mile east. If I fall, you take the children and you run. You do not look back. You hear me, I will not leave you. You will. Because those children need their mother more than they need me. His voice broke. Please, Martha, promise me. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream, wanted to grab him and hold him and never let go. But the torches were getting closer, the thunder of hooves growing louder. I promise, she whispered. Eli kissed her. Hard, desperate, final. I love you, he said. I know it is too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I love you, Martha Stone. And whatever happens tonight, I need you to know that. I love you too. The words came easy because they were true. I love you, Eli. He smiled, the first real smile she had ever seen on his face. A smile that reached his gray eyes and softened all the hard edges. Then I have already won, he said. Whatever they take from me, they cannot take that. He grabbed his rifle and ran toward the trail. Martha ran toward the cabin. Everyone up, she shouted, bursting through the door. Cellar, now, the children moved. 3 days of drills had made it instinct. Sarah grabbed the twins, one under each arm. Lucy pulled Lily by the hand. William stumbled, but kept his feet. Martha yanked open the trap door to the cellar. Down, go. They went, one by one, disappearing into the darkness below. Gunshots echoed from the ridge. Martha froze at the trap door, looking back through the window. She could see muzzle flashes in the darkness, could hear Eli's rifle, could hear men shouting, screaming. Mama, Sarah's voice called from below. Mama, come on. Martha did not move. Eli was out there, fighting, dying, and she had promised to run. More gunshots, a scream that might have been Eli's voice. Might have been Mama. Martha grabbed the rifle Eli had given her, the one she had practiced with for 3 days, the one she had sworn to use only as a last resort. This was the last resort. Sarah, she said, her voice calm despite the terror clawing at her chest. If I am not back in 10 minutes, you take your brothers and sisters through the tunnel. You run and you do not stop until you reach Fort Collins. Mama, no. Promise me. I cannot. Promise me, Sarah Grace Stone. Silence from below. Then broken? I promise. Martha closed the trap door, pushed the heavy chest over it. If Blackwood's men found it, they would have to work to get through. Then she ran outside. The ridge was chaos. Eli had taken cover behind the woodpile, his rifle blazing in the darkness. 3 men lay still on the ground. 4 more had taken cover behind rocks and trees, returning fire. But more were coming. Always more. A tide of torches and guns and violence sweeping up the ridge. Martha raised her rifle, found a target, squeezed the trigger. The recoil slammed into her shoulder. The man she had aimed at spun, clutching his arm. She did not have time to think about what she had done. She worked the action, found another target, fired again. Martha. Eli's voice shocked and furious. What are you doing, fighting? She ducked behind a water barrel to reload. I told you to run. You are not my husband yet, Elijah Stone. You do not get to give me orders. Despite everything, Eli laughed, a wild, desperate sound that rang across the chaos. You are crazy. You married me. More men coming up the trail. Martha fired until her rifle was empty. Ducked to reload. Fired again. The battle raged. 5 minutes. 10. Time lost all meaning in the thunder of gunfire and the screams of wounded men. Martha did not know how many she hit. Did not want to know. She just kept shooting, kept reloading, kept fighting for the family she had built from nothing. Stone. Marcus Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Stop. Stop, or I burn this cabin to the ground. Martha looked toward the voice. Blackwood stood at the edge of the clearing, his wounded arm from their last encounter wrapped in a sling, but his other hand held a torch. And his eyes, those cold, dead eyes, were fixed on the cabin. You would not dare, Eli growled from behind the woodpile. Watch me. Blackwood hurled the torch. It arced through the night sky, trailing sparks and smoke, and landed on the cabin roof. The dry wood caught immediately. Flames licked up toward the stars like the tongue of some hungry beast, finally released from its cage. Martha started to run toward the cabin. Eli grabbed her arm. The cellar! The children have to use the tunnel. Now! They ran together, dodging bullets crashing through the cabin door. Smoke was already filling the room, heat pressing down like a physical weight. The fire spreading faster than seemed possible. Martha shoved the chest aside, yanked open the trap door. Sarah, the tunnel. Go now! Coughing from below. Then movement. Shadows disappearing into darkness. Martha. Eli pulled her toward the door. We have to. The ceiling groaned. Cracked. A burning beam came crashing down. Eli shoved Martha out the door just as it fell where she had been standing. They tumbled into the yard, coughing, gasping. And Marcus Blackwood stood over them, pistol in hand, smile stretching across his face. Finally, he said, I do love it when they make it difficult. Martha looked up at him. At this man who had hunted her family, who had burned her home, who stood now with the power of life and death in his hands. You cannot have them, she said. You will never have them. Oh, my dear. Blackwood cocked the pistol. I already do. He aimed at Eli. Martha did not think. She lunged. Her body slammed into Blackwood just as the pistol fired. The shot went wide, screaming past Eli's head into the burning cabin. Blackwood stumbled backward, cursing, and Martha fell with him, her fingers clawing at his gun hand. You stupid woman. She did not let him finish. She drove her knee into his stomach with every ounce of strength she possessed. Blackwood doubled over, gasping, and the pistol flew from his grip, skittering across the frozen ground. Martha scrambled for it. Blackwood grabbed her ankle, yanking her back. She hit the ground, hard breath exploding from her lungs. He was on her in an instant, hands closing around her throat. Should have taken my offer, he hissed, his face inches from hers, his eyes blazing with fury and something else. Something that looked almost like admiration. Would have been easier for everyone. Martha could not breathe, could not think. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. But she could still fight. Her hand found a rock. Small, sharp. She swung it with everything she had. The rock connected with Blackwood's temple. He howled, his grip loosening just enough for Martha to twist free. She rolled, gasping, crawling toward the fallen pistol. Her fingers closed around cold metal. She turned, raising the gun just as Blackwood lunged for her again. Stop. The voice was not hers, not Eli's. Everyone froze. Thomas stood at the edge of the ridge, mounted on Runner, a rifle in his hands. Behind him, a dozen men on horseback spread out in formation. And at their head, wearing a silver star on his chest, rode a man with a gray beard and eyes like flint. The territorial marshal, Marcus Blackwood. The marshal's voice rang out across the chaos. You are under arrest for arson, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Order your men to stand down. Blackwood's face twisted with rage. You have no jurisdiction here. I have jurisdiction everywhere in this territory. The marshal urged his horse forward, and I have a dozen witnesses to what you have done tonight, including a 12-year-old boy who rode 2 days without stopping to tell me exactly what kind of man you are. Martha's heart swelled. Thomas, her brave, impossible son. Blackwood looked around. His men were backing away, hands rising, weapons dropping. The fight had gone out of them the moment they saw the silver star. This is not over, Blackwood snarled. It is. Eli's voice came from behind Martha. He had found his rifle and it was trained on Blackwood's chest. You are finished, Blackwood. You have been finished since the moment you threatened my family. Your family. The words seemed to hit Blackwood like a physical blow. His face contorted with something that might have been jealousy, might have been grief. Marshal Blackwood forced a smile, spreading his hands in a gesture of innocence. This is all a misunderstanding. I came here to burn down a man's home with children inside. The marshal dismounted, drawing his own pistol. I saw the flames from a mile away. I saw your men shooting at a woman. I saw you with your hands around her throat. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to ice. Do not insult my intelligence. Two deputies moved forward, grabbing Blackwood's arms, forcing them behind his back. You will regret this, Blackwood spat. I have friends in high places, lawyers, politicians. You cannot. I can, and I am. The marshal nodded to his men. Take him. Take all of them. Martha watched as Marcus Blackwood was dragged away, still shouting threats, still promising revenge. But his voice grew fainter with every step swallowed by the night and the crackling of the burning cabin. Then Thomas was there, sliding off his horse, running toward her. Mama. She caught him in her arms, holding so tight she thought she might break them both. You did it, she whispered against his hair. You did it, Thomas. You saved us. I promised I would come back. His voice cracked. I promised. I know, baby. I know. Eli appeared beside them, one hand on Thomas's shoulder. You rode hard, son. Harder than most men could manage. Thomas looked up at him, eyes shining. I had good motivation. Eli's jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. Yes, you did. The children. Martha pulled back suddenly, panic flooding through her. Sarah and the others. The tunnel. I told them to run. I will find them. Eli squeezed her arm. Stay here. He ran toward the edge of the ridge, disappearing into the darkness. Martha held Thomas close, watching the cabin burn, watching her hopes turn to ash. Everything they had built. Everything they had started to become. Gone. Ma'am. She turned. The marshal stood before her, hat in his hands, face creased with concern. I am sorry we did not get here sooner. The boy pushed hard, but the mountains do not care about schedules. You came. Martha's voice broke. That is what matters. Your son has courage, ma'am. Rode into Fort Collins, half dead from exhaustion. Would not rest until he had told his story. The marshal shook his head. I have seen grown men with less grit. He gets it from his father. Martha looked at Thomas, remembering Henry, remembering the man who had loved her, who had given her 7 children, who had died too young. Both his fathers. Thomas's eyes widened, but he did not speak, just held her tighter. Voices echoed from the darkness. Martha's heart lurched. Then Eli emerged from the tree line, and he was not alone. Sarah came first, carrying Violet on her hip. Then Lucy, her red hair wild, leading Rose by the hand. William stumbled behind them, pale but standing. And Lily ran straight to Martha, crashing into her legs with the force of a small hurricane. Mama. The tunnel was dark and scary, but Sarah said we had to be brave. And I was brave, Mama. I was so brave. Martha dropped to her knees, gathering as many children as she could reach. They piled onto her. All of them. 7 bodies pressing close, 7 hearts beating against hers. You are safe, she whispered. You are all safe. The cabin is burning, William said quietly, his voice small and scared. I know, sweetheart. Where will we live? Martha looked at the flames, consuming everything Eli had built. 8 years of work. 8 years of grief poured into wood and stone. Gone in minutes. We will figure it out, she said. We always do. Eli stood apart, watching the fire. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes held something broken. Something that had shattered and was struggling to piece itself back together. Martha gently untangled herself from the children and went to him. Eli, he did not look at her. I built that cabin with my own hands. Every log, every nail. Rebecca helped me choose the spot. Mary took her first steps on that floor. Martha's heart ached. I am sorry. Do not be. His voice was hollow. It was just wood, just stone. What matters is... He stopped, swallowed hard. What matters is what... He finally turned to look at her, at the children huddled together behind her, at Thomas standing tall beside the marshal's men. What matters is you are alive, he said quietly. All of you. That is worth more than any cabin. Martha took his hand. We will rebuild. Martha, we will rebuild Eli. Together. That is what families do. Something shifted in his face. Something like hope, fragile and new. Family, he repeated like he was testing the word on his tongue, like he had forgotten how it tasted. Family. Martha squeezed his hand. You are not alone anymore. You have not been since the moment you said $300. A sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob, something in between. I do not deserve you. Stop saying that. Martha reached up, cupping his face in her hands. You deserve everything, Elijah Stone, and I intend to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. She kissed him. This time it was not desperate, not final. It was a beginning, a promise, a foundation on which to build. You. Lucy's voice rang out. Mama is kissing Mr. Stone. They are married, Sarah said wearily. They are allowed. It is still gross. Everything is gross to you. Not everything, just kissing. Martha pulled back, laughing despite everything. Laughing because her children were bickering and her house was burning and Marcus Blackwood was finally gone. Laughing because she was alive. Because they all were. The marshal approached, clearing his throat. Ma'am, Mr. Stone, I hate to interrupt, but we should get moving. It is a cold night, and those children need shelter. Where Martha asked, there is a way station about 3 miles east, basic but warm. You can stay there tonight. The marshal paused. Tomorrow we will figure out the rest. Eli nodded slowly. Thank you, Marshal, for everything. Thank your boy. The marshal glanced at Thomas. He is the one who would not give up. They gathered what they could salvage. Blankets from the wagon, food supplies, weapons. The children were exhausted, stumbling with fatigue, but none of them complained. They had survived too much to complain about a 3-mile walk. As they started down the trail, Martha looked back once at the burning cabin. Do not look back, Eli said quietly beside her. I have to. Why? Martha watched the flames reach toward the stars. Because I want to remember what we lost, so I never forget what we still have. Eli was silent for a moment. Then he took her hand. We will build something better, he said. Bigger, with rooms for all the children, a proper kitchen, maybe a porch where we can sit and watch the sunset. That sounds nice, it does. Does it not? He almost smiled. Have not thought about the future in a long time. Feels strange? Good strange or bad strange? Good. He squeezed her fingers. Definitely good. They walked through the night, a strange procession of deputies and children and 2 people who had found each other against impossible odds. The stars wheeled overhead. The wind whispered through the pines. And Martha Stone, who had been sold on an auction block for $300, walked into her future with her head held high. Spring came early that year. Word came from Fort Collins 2 weeks later. Marcus Blackwood had been tried and convicted on 12 counts, including arson, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. The judge, unmoved by Blackwood's money or his threats, had sentenced him to 25 years in the territorial prison. He will die in there, Eli said quietly when Martha read him the letter. Men like him do not survive cages. Do you feel anything? Martha asked. Eli was silent for a long moment. I thought I would feel satisfied, he said finally. I thought I would feel like Rebecca and Mary had finally been avenged, and I feel nothing. He looked at her, and something in his eyes had changed. Something had healed. Because revenge was never what I needed this. A family, a future, a reason to stomp looking backward. Martha took his hand. Then that is what we will build. Together. By April, the new cabin stood on the ridge, bigger and stronger than before. Thomas had helped lay every log, his young muscles aching, but his heart proud. Lucy had insisted on installing the door handle herself. Even the twins had contributed, carrying small stones for the fireplace, while Lily supervised with all the authority of a 6-year-old general. Martha stood on the new porch, wider than the old one, with a rocking chair Eli had built just for her, and watched her family work in the yard below. Sarah was teaching William to ride properly, patient and encouraging. Thomas was helping Eli repair the fence, the 2 of them working in comfortable silence. Lucy chased Lily around the vegetable garden while the twins shrieked with laughter. 7 children, 1 husband, a home built from ashes and hope. Martha's hand drifted to her stomach where a new secret grew. She had not told Eli yet, had not told anyone. But soon, when the time was right, Eli looked up from his work as if sensing her gaze. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes and softened all the hard edges of his face. She smiled back. 2 months ago, she had stood on an auction block praying for someone, anyone to see her worth. Now she stood on her own porch, surrounded by love, surrounded by family, surrounded by everything she had never dared to dream. The world had called her worthless, undesirable, a burden. The world had been wrong. Mrs. Stone, she turned. Eli stood at the bottom of the porch steps, his face dusty and sweaty from work, but his eyes soft in a way she had learned to treasure. You called Mrs. Stone. He climbed the steps, coming to stand beside her. How does that feel? Like a new name, a new life, a new beginning, maybe. She took his hand, or maybe a continuation. Continuing what Henry started. Continuing what Rebecca and Mary wanted for you. Eli was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. I visited their graves last week. First time since I met you. I know. Sarah told me. I told them about you, about the children, about, he swallowed, about finding a reason to live again. Martha squeezed his hand. What did they say? They did not say anything. They are gone. A small smile flickered across his lips, but the wind blew through the cemetery, and I thought I heard Mary laugh. Tears ran down Martha's face. She did not try to stop them. I am pregnant, she said. Eli froze. What? I am pregnant. 2 months along. She placed her hand on her belly. I was going to tell you sooner, but there was so much happening with the new house, and he kissed her. This was not the gentle kiss of their early days. This was the kiss of a man who had found home after years of wandering in darkness. Fierce, joyful, full of everything words could not say. When they parted, his eyes were wet. Boy or girl, I do not know. Too early to tell. Does not matter. He placed his hand over hers on her belly. Whatever it is, this child will have a family that loves it. That is all that matters. Mama, Lily's voice rang out from the yard. Come play with us. Martha laughed, wiping her tears. Duty calls. Then go. Eli nudged her gently toward the steps. Go play with your daughter. I will finish the fence. She walked down the steps, heading toward her children, toward her husband, toward the life she had built from the ruins of despair. Mama, Lily ran to meet her, golden curl bouncing in arms outstretched. Pick me up, pick me up. Martha swept her daughter into her arms, spinning until they were both dizzy and laughing. I love you, she said, pressing her cheek to Lily's. I know. Lily grinned. You say it all the time. And I will keep saying it, every day, forever. She looked up at the ridge where Eli stood on the porch watching them. He raised his hand, a small gesture, but it carried everything they had built together. Martha waved back. Then she turned to her children, to her family, and let herself be swept into the chaos of laughter and shouting and love. $300. That was the price they had set on her that day in Copper Falls. But what she found, what she built, what she became, was worth more than all the gold in Montana Territory. She found family. She found home. She found herself. And that in the end was everything. The mountains stood guard like ancient sentinels. The sky stretched endless and blue. And somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out, riding the wind toward the horizon. Martha Stone watched it soar, her hand resting on her belly, where new life grew, her heart full of a peace she had never thought possible. She had been sold for $300 on a cold January morning. But what she gained was beyond price. Love, hope, a future, a family that would never let her go. And as the sun began to set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Martha closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks. For Eli, who had seen her worth when no one else would. For her children, who had given her the strength to keep fighting. For the life that grew inside her, a promise of tomorrow. And for second chances. Because sometimes in the darkest moments, when all hope seems lost, salvation comes from the most unexpected places. A stranger's voice cutting through a January wind. $300 for a woman nobody wanted. And a love that would last forever. The end was not an end at all. It was a beginning. And Martha Stone, surrounded by everything she had ever dreamed of, knew that the best was yet to come.